Well, you know what? Welcome, Lab Coat Agents, to the back end of what we talk about before we go live. You got a good piece of it today. We're talking about the chaos in California with weather and fires and tornadoes and all this craziness, which is a great segue, Brian, into what's going on in the mortgage and real estate world, right? We touched on last week, we talked a lot about forbearance and how that's going to have an impact and how the equity positions of a lot of these people in forbearance. And I want to touch on that again because for anybody who wasn't on that call, there is a ton of opportunity for you, and we're going to touch on that. But first, let's get into what's been going on the last couple of weeks, which there's been several things, and I'm going to let you take it. Most importantly, in my world, and a lot of people's world, is the bump in pricing, right, that the FHFA put out in terms of basically trying to stop refis, if you will, or trying to, slow it down a little bit. And let's talk about how that is going to impact the real estate world. So welcome back to another episode of State of the Month with National Real Estate Post and our good friend Brian Stevens here. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah. The big thing about this is it's entirely unnecessary, and it's roundly criticized as a bad move by absolutely every single person I've spoke with on this. I just had a conversation last week with David Stevens, who's the past president of the FHFA, and if Joe Biden wins, will be the next director of HUD. I'm just telling you that's going to happen. He's connected more than anybody, and of course, to get to that level, you have to have a high degree of diplomacy. And I saw that diplomacy go out the window because this makes no sense. I went into the conversation trying to find a reason why this could happen, even if I disagreed with it, and it just wasn't there to be found. So here's why it's important to real estate agents.
Actually, hold on, Brian, real quick, before we get into it, just in case somebody's living under a rock or just isn't in the know, explain what it is. Explain what happened.
Okay, so what the FHFA did, which holds our GSEs, the government-sponsored enterprises that we know as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, in conservatorship. By the way, the longest conservatorship in the history of the world, not this country. Now, over the past 9 years, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have become the most successful company in the history of the world. Now, I'm not using superlatives, in a way to be hyperbolic. That happens to be the truth. They've made more money than Exxon, BP, Apple, you name it. They've made more money. The whole idea of conservatorship is you want to right the ships of these systemically important companies that we all rely on. And once you right the ship of them, then the idea of conservatorship is they're supposed to disappear. So how do we have the longest conservatorship in the history of the world for the most successful companies in the history of the world? So while in conservatorship, the director, his name is Mark Calabria, and he wields a lot of independent influence. In other words, the executive branch doesn't have the ability to go in there and micromanage him. As a director of the FHFA, he's got broad decision-making abilities. And what he decided to do last week is add a 50 basis point fee, and it's called an adverse market fee on every refinance in the country. So let me ask you this. Have you done any refinances lately?
Just a couple.
Again, using superlatives, it is the biggest refinance market in the history of the world that we're dealing with right now. We're shoving $3 trillion through a $2 trillion assembly line that's known as the United States mortgage market. And all that additional money, it became something of a shameless money grab by the FHFA. And what it essentially amounts to is a tax. And it's a significant tax. The average cost of the 50 basis point overlay on every single refinance in this country is a fee of $1,400. $1,400 additional dollars. It takes about $9,200 to bring a mortgage to market right now, and we're adding $1,400 on that. It defies logic. The GSEs, Fannie and Freddie, are making more money now than they've ever made because of all these refinances and the fact that we don't have foreclosures. So the only thing that Fannie and Freddie does is they give what's called an implicit guarantee on the loans. They're not doing anything other than saying, okay, if that loan goes into foreclosure, I'll ensure that whoever the investor of that mortgage-backed security is going to be made whole. Well, now nobody's foreclosing right now. You know, I think we were just having a conversation about the stat, but if you bought your house in the past 5 years, and right now, in 96% of every metropolitan market in the United States right now, values have gone up, and we've all seen these numbers, and values are higher than they were in 2008. Now, that's the ebb, or excuse me, that's the flow. The ebb, the trough down here is when people were buying in 2010, 11, and 12, and we saw this enormous spike in values. Everybody's sitting on a ton of equity, more than we've ever had. So the idea of a massive foreclosure market isn't realistic, meaning that Fannie and Freddie's place is absolutely secure for the next couple of years. So why the need for an additional fee? Now, Fannie and Freddie, they have something called a guarantee fee, and that comes between 1 to 1.5%. So Fannie and Freddie, on a $300,000 deal, they're making $300 to $4,500. Now we're going to add another $1,400 on top of that. It's unnecessary. So this fee came at a point that caught absolutely everybody off guard. The Mortgage Bankers Association didn't know anything about it. The National Association of Realtors didn't know anything about it. The Senate Banking Committee didn't know anything about it. The House Financial Services Committee didn't know anything about it. And my God, even the executive branch didn't know anything about it. This thing just came out of the blue, and it was a money grab. So here's why it's important for real estate agents to understand how this can affect their markets adversely. We just burned through $3 trillion called the CARES Act. We have record high unemployment right now, and yet property values are still going up. These two numbers aren't copacetic. They don't work together. How is it possible? Well, it's possible because we have artificially boosted our economy with a $3 trillion handout. So now that money's gone, they're looking at the HEALS Act. Well, we can't do $3 trillion again, so they're looking at $1 trillion. So that $1 trillion is not going to last us 4 months like the $3 trillion did. It's going to get us to somewhere around October or November. And when that happens and we quit handing out free money to people, well, we're going to start to see these unemployment numbers to adversely and realistically start affecting real estate. This is going to happen. Now, here's why this is bad, because when somebody does a refinance, they get their impound account back, which could be a couple $1,000. They also get to skip a monthly payment. That could be a couple $1,000. And then they're paying a lower amount of money, which is going to keep money in your communities. So we could either, on the taxpayer's dime, go out there and add line items to the Fed Reserve balance, or we could go out there and let the private market deal with it. And that's what lenders and real estate have been doing across the country. So when we add this fee, all we're doing is taking and strip mining our communities of some of their wealth that they're desperately going to need come October, November, and December. And the last time I checked, we all like to buy presents for our kids on Christmas. Wouldn't it be nice to have a housing market that wasn't completely devastated? This will have a ripple effect if it's left in place. So do you think though that, because like you said, it makes no sense. Why Collaborate would have done this? It makes no sense. Is it a power play? Is it a political play? I mean, we have an election coming up. What sense can you make of it? Well,
and by the way, they gave no time. It was, here it is, and you have until September 1st. You have no time.
No.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, just in a moment's notice. So here's what I think it comes down to. And you're trying to, it might not make a whole bunch of sense, but here's what I think is taking place. Collaborate is very much an independent, a laissez-faire, hands-off approach to the economy. And so when he became the director of the FHFA, after Mel Watt was in there, his whole idea was he wanted to recapitalize and release Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship. So what recapitalization means is, if realtors don't know, right now, up until a few months ago, every quarter, the United States Treasury would take all of Fannie and Freddie's money. So now they're giving an implicit guarantee on all these loans, but they don't have the money to back it. It's like a broke insurance company. Well, that's great that you're collecting my money, but what happens if my damn house burns down? And so what the Treasury decided to do is they changed in 2011 the terms of their conservatorship. Now, I'm gonna get in the weeds here for just a couple of seconds, but just bear with me. So when they went into conservatorship, they created something called preferred stock. And they bought nearly 90% of Fannie and Freddie. And that preferred stock that was owned by the Treasury, which means it was owned by me and you, that preferred stock superseded the common stock that has been in existence for 75 years. So private money has always been able to invest in the government-sponsored enterprises, and that's why it's always been a private-public type of company. It's guaranteed by the federal government, but the funding that was going into it came from, your 401k, your retirements and things like that. So what happened in right after the meltdown last time in 2009, when Fannie and Freddie, they didn't bail them out. They bought them. There's a difference. A bailout means you're going to borrow money and pay it back. It's been $135 billion in overpayment to the Federal Reserve, and you might not know this, but not one penny has been taken off of what you guys perceive to be the bailout. Why is that? Because they didn't bail them out. They bought them. So private investment lost their ass in this whole thing. The federal government made out like bandits, okay? So what Calabria, I believe, wants to do is he wants to recapitalize them. The Treasury is now allowing Fannie and Freddie to keep their money. And so he's saying, well, we have the greatest opportunity in the history of this country with the refinance market that we have. Let's just do a money grab. And, the problem is that, we're in a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic where we've got out of control and underemployment. The last thing we need to do is take money out of our economy. We need to be adding money into our economy. And if we can keep that off the balance sheet of the Fed or the Treasury, that's even better. Now, here's my last point on this. So Calabria goes in there and he adds a 50 basis point overlay to every refinance in the country, okay? Now, they have nothing whatsoever to do, the FHFA, with interest rates. That's all being controlled more or less by the Federal Reserve, not by raising and lowering rates, but what they're doing is they're buying all the mortgage-backed securities because we don't have an appetite for them in this country anymore. So by the Federal Reserve going out and buying mortgage-backed securities to the tune of billions of dollars every month, adding to their balance sheet, they've been able to keep interest rates artificially low. And who's the benefactor of these artificially low interest rates? Certainly your clients, but more importantly, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because now they get to do record refinances, though they have nothing to do with it. And they arbitrarily came out and said, we're going to keep $1,400 from every one of your clients, your friends, your neighbors, your sphere of influence, your communities, and nobody can make sense of this. So I think what it is it's him really having an analog or an antiquated way of looking at the world, which was really pre-COVID. Is the idea of recapitalizing and releasing Fannie Mae, is that ultimately a good thing? I think it is. Is it good right now with all the instability in the market? Absolutely not. This is completely nuts.
Yeah.
So again, for real estate agents, this is going to have a ripple effect that is going to affect your communities. If we don't get rid of this fee, and after the HEALS Act, when that money runs out, we're going to start seeing unbelievable numbers when it comes to sale opportunities and, God forbid, but potentially short sale opportunities for you. Mm-hmm. Because right now, what was just sent to me was that the FHFA just came out and they said that their loans rose to almost 16%, the share of loans, 16% in the second quarter, or FHA, excuse me, and that's up from 9.7%. And these are deals right now, 9.7% in the previous 3 months, and it's a highest level of non-payments recording back to 1979.
The forbearance.
Well, it could be a forbearance or just a non-payment. It could be one of the two.
Touche.
But think of this, 1979. Arthur Fonzarelli was wearing a leather jacket and shorts on a couple paddle skis jumping over a shark the last time we saw numbers this bad. It's insane. And yet we know that in 90% of every market, property values are going up. Well, how do we have record numbers of non-payment and record numbers of property values going up? This is the impact that we have right now from the CARES and the HEALS Act, which is soon to come. When that wears off, it's going to be like a drunk with a hangover. You're eventually going to have to pay the piper on this stuff, and it's going to affect our communities, because if you can't make your payment, you can't stay in that house. And this is where we're at right now. So this is why it's absolutely vitally important that this 50 basis point overlay get repealed, because it is not getting Fannie or Freddie closer to recapitalizing and releasing from conservatorship. It's not doing it. If you torpedo the economy, you're just going to guarantee that they'll be in there for another decade, and perhaps that's the reason. Okay, so it's not getting you any closer to your goals, and all it's going to do is cause undue harm in all of our communities. Because I got to think with real estate agents, and I'll get off my diatribe here in a second. Most real estate agents are, they're kind of they're kind of the grease on the ball bearings in our communities. I mean, that's what they do. They're people connectors. They're community connectors. They're out there sponsoring baseball games. They're going to mixers. They're doing, the young professional, like all these groups. It brings energy to our communities. And I think most realtors out there are thinking that they would rather see their communities better if given the option. And because you are the largest trade association, in the world, realtors have an enormous opportunity to impact what's going on, even in the mortgage market. So when I was speaking, once again, I'm going to go to the well. When I was speaking with Dave Stevens on this stuff, he said, if you call your congressmen, your senators, okay, and you let them know that this needs to be repealed, that it's not acceptable, they're not picking the phone up. But what happens is every single one of those calls is transcribed and put on their desk. In short, when you reach out to your representatives, you can impact what's going on. And we've been pushing this for the last week, us as an industry, not me, but us as an industry. And what we did is we finally got the executive branch to say, hey, hold on a second, this is not necessarily okay. And an article just came out today that said that that the Fannie and Freddie fee hike is going to become an election issue. So this is going from the back burners of conversation, and it's getting on the front burners right now. So if your audience and lab coat agents were to go out and reach out to their senators and their House of Representative members and saying, take away this hike because it's going to hurt my community, and there's absolutely no reason for it. With 1.4 million members, if we got a handful of agents to do that, to clog up the lines in DC, that could have an enormous influence on a macro and a micro level.
Yes. And I was just going to ask you, because there was a question that said, what is the mechanism to get it repealed? And in the mortgage world, there's obviously every company's firing out emails to everyone saying, hey, go to this link and do this. Do you guys have anything on the National Real Estate Post to that question or to that point? Or is that something that you just recommend they just call who in their state, their congressmen? Who do you recommend?
There's a bunch of ways that you can go about this, but what I'll do is, in fact, if Frank can do this, I believe the National Association of Mortgage Brokers has a petition to repeal this. Yeah. And we'll get that over to you. And spend 5 minutes. Just spend 5 minutes.
It's not even that.
Yeah.
Like less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
You can do it.
So can you go ahead and get that in the comments?
That'd be fantastic. Or Frank just send it to me and I'll post it into Lab Coats.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this right now. I guarantee you that the National Association of Realtors is trying to do something about this. So if you went to NAR.com, you could find it there. The MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, has it. We're going to send one over to you right now. But really, what we're looking for, guys, is noise. Yeah. It's noise. We need to be noisy about this, because your average homeowner doesn't, unless they're going to get a refinance in the next 2 months, they're not going to know about this. And in fact, even if they do, they might just assume that rates ticked up when in fact they didn't. Last point on this, just real quickly, if you allow me. So your clients are not going to pay that fee. They're not going to pay $1,400. It ain't going to happen. What's going to happen is every lender in the country is going to raise their interest rates in order to cover that fee when they sell that loan on the secondary market. So your clients aren't going to pay $1,400. They're going to finance it over 30 years. And I don't care if you look at an amortization schedule, even if you have that thing for 5, 10, 11, 12 years, you're not going to pay $1,400. You're going to pay $3,500. You're going to pay $4,000. So this is a huge number, and it kind of stinks that, decision making always trickles down, and it hurts the ones that can least afford it. And who is this going to hurt the worst? It's going to hurt our underserved communities, and oftentimes our minority communities who are on the lower ends of the socioeconomic spectrum. If you're pulling down $300,000 a year, this ain't that big of a deal. $1,400, shit, I'll write a check for it. Right. But if you're a single mom trying to raise 3 kids on $1,000 a year, not knowing if you're going to be employed next week, this thing becomes, either a lifeline or an anchor chain to your foot.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that, because it is systematically and constantly the case that the ones who can least afford it are the ones who ultimately bear the burden of these costs. And this thing is summarily across the board, unequivocally concentrated, filtered in a vacuum, being knocked down by everybody on both sides of the aisle as being a bad move. A bad move, an unforeseen move that nobody saw coming.
It's going to get interesting, man. It's going to get interesting. And the thing that you didn't even mention, too, is all the people that are in forbearance haven't had a chance to refinance yet.
Yeah.
They're still waiting in the wings, and now they essentially just got screwed out of probably a quarter point on their rate. It's a shame. It really is a shame. Okay, so I think we beat that into the ground.
We did.
We're going to post it. So, I'm going to put it in the comments. Frank just sent it to me. I'm going to put it in the comments for those of you who are on the Zoom call. I'm also going to post the Lab Code Agents later, so thank you for that. Brian, what else is going on in our real estate world?
Well, I mean, where there's problems, there's generally opportunities. And, and we spoke about this the last time we had a conversation. But because most folks don't know what's happening in the mortgage market right now, and they're not looking at the short-term and long-term effects of the HEALS and CARES Act, they're not seeing the same information that I'm seeing. So we just saw mortgage delinquencies across the board spike in the second quarter of 2020. Get this. The delinquency rate for mortgage loans on 1 to 4 unit residential properties increased to a seasonally adjusted rate of 8.22% on all loans. These are people, these are your clients, these are your friends. Now that might not seem like a huge number, but that's 1 in 10 right now. And I'm telling you, it's going to increase to 1 in 20. So, it's going to increase to 2 in 10. So if you're staring at 10 houses that are owned, 2 of those are going to be delinquent by next quarter. What realtors need to understand is that, and we saw this, we have a history of understanding people's behavior. In 2007, 8, and 9, during the last once-in-a-lifetime housing crisis, most people waited to sell their house after they had affected their credit in a negative way, okay? So meaning they missed their payments, they were behind, and they had to deal with a short sale, which means their opportunity to buy again was going to be limited to a number of years that had to pass before those delinquencies came off. This time around, it could be a heck of a lot worse, which is exactly what you're talking about. When you look at those that are in forbearance right now, that forbearance doesn't make that money go away. It's simply tacking it onto the back end of your balance. So what they're saying is, well, you can go for 6 months and not technically have a late, but those 6 months payments, that $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 is just added to the back of that mortgage. So then if you go in and find property values that could potentially be decreasing, and you miss another 3 or 4 payments, and you find yourself in a situation for a short sale, all you're doing is adding to your balance and burning through your equity. So if this market and the COVID thing goes on for the next 6 to 12 months, as everybody says it's going to, and we have or underemployed people, it is absolutely imperative that realtors reach out, not for their own personal benefit, though they will benefit. It's absolutely imperative that real estate agents reach out to their sphere of influence, the people that they know, and we start to have more honest conversations about what's going on. Because for those underemployed people, it's going to be 10 times better to sell that house a month before you go delinquent rather than a month after you go delinquent. So I know these can be difficult conversations, but remember, realtors, you're the professionals. They're looking to you for this. Even if they don't know it right now, these conversations need to be taking place across the country. And the only ones who could do this effectively, it's not going to be the big box ones out there. It's not going to be necessarily the companies. This has to happen on a grassroots level. Like you as a real estate agent, you need to go look in your community, the people that you know, and start having these conversations, uncomfortable conversations. How are you doing? What's going on with work right now? Is everything okay? Are you getting behind? Well, what I want to do is I want to share with you the reasons why we have to have this conversation, because I promise you, selling your house at the top of the market right now where you don't have any late payments and then jumping back in this market if it starts to tank 4 or 5 months down the road is a hell of a lot better than somebody who's 2 or 3 months behind. So I really believe the marching order for real estate agents right now is just to get out and do what you need to be doing, you should be doing, which is your job title, which is filling your fiduciary, not just to your clients, but your community, going out there and speaking with people and letting them know, don't wait till it's too late. Have the conversations now.
Yeah, and here's the thing. What Brian just said, folks, is such a great opportunity, A, to touch your clients, but B, to create content.
Yep.
I mean, you should be creating content around this and educating your SOI through social media, through email, however you do it. I mean, send them a damn mailer. I don't care.
Yep.
Educate I mean, this is opportunity for you guys. And the other thing I wanted to mention is everybody's whining about a lack of inventory right now. You've got the buyer, but there's nothing to buy. Hey, guess what? If we don't do our job, we're going to flip this thing and we're not going to have buyers because they're all going to damage their credit. And now you're going to have an exact opposite problem if you don't pay attention to what's going on.
You're 100% right on this. And if you don't think the markets can flip around on a dime, then you haven't been in real estate for the last 6 months, let alone 10 years or 20 years. Yep. In fact, this seems to be the direction of real estate in my experience. You know, when we saw subprime loans come in 2001 and 2, it was overnight. Like there was 100 subprime companies that propped up. Yeah. And I remember the days, as you probably do. It was New Century Mortgage. We had Don the Magic Wand, who was our account rep. We said, hey, I got a 540 credit score. Send it in. No, hold on. I got a send it in. Just like on any loan, send it in. Mm-hmm. And we saw this massive surge in property values because we had a national policy on everybody should own a house, which again is a great conversation for another day because those subprime companies, they came about based on federal policy that was through HUD that said we had to have 57% of all houses sold in the United States had to go to low to moderate income people. And there's just the truth of the matter. If you don't have money, your credit generally doesn't tend to be as good as it was. And if you don't have money, it's harder to make your payments. And yet we had a federal policy mandated by HUD that said 57% of all houses sold had to go to underserved and low to moderate income communities. It was a recipe for disaster. We filled it, but that happened overnight. Then the crash happened overnight. I mean, and then, you know, what happened in 2011? Property values have gone on this ride that nobody would have ever expected, surpassing where we were during the subprime crisis. And what have we done? Then we tank our rates again, but we see these massive changes in real estate, and there's no reason to assume that that's going to change going forward. I promise you, great times are great, but they generally are followed by times that aren't as great. And I don't want to be henny penny saying the sky is falling. What I am saying is, as a real estate agent, you need to be reading essentially the tea leaves of your market, find out what's going on, see what's on the horizon, and adjust accordingly. Because the next generation, when the market changes, I promise you this, it's going to be horrible for some and brilliant for others. Yep. Because that's how markets work. So just adjust. And what you need to do at this moment is reach out and talk to folks who are thinking about listing. And according to the National Association of Realtors, it's upwards of 65% of people who own homes right now think it's a good time to sell their property, yet they're not doing it. So what they need is a little effective sales saying, hey, sell right now while it's at the top, and maybe you can buy into a softer market, especially with your entry-level homes. You know, a home that's 15 to 20 years old that's under 2,000 square feet. Those are the sweet spot homes. That is the hottest market right now. If you can find listings of entry-level homes of people you sold homes to 3 years ago or further, they've got the equity, and then they would buy into a softer move-up market, and there's massive opportunity. I actually did I had a bunch of realtors come down to my office, and we went to a title company, and we said, okay, here's the parameters on entry-level homes. Here's the stats saying that these people are highly motivated. And I think it was like 15 realtors. And I did the whole thing live on Facebook too. So we were either going to, you know, sink or swim. I think it came out to like the first night, 9 listing presentation and opportunities from people who didn't think they were going to sell before that conversation took place. That market still exists, and that one, it's more important now than ever to start having those conversations.
100%. In times of crisis, find opportunity. In times of opportunity, anticipate crisis, because it always comes full circle. And I think that's what we're talking about right now. What's that?
Who said that?
I did just now.
I'm stealing that.
But it's true. Tristan and I talk about this because, you know, when COVID started, everybody freaked out and we're like, ooh, opportunity. Now everybody's busy as hell and they're not paying attention to what's coming. Right. And you said, that's what made me think of it when you said that, was that though when we come out of this, a lot of people will struggle, but there will be some that thrive. And it's the some that thrive that are right now, they're anticipating what's coming. And they're doing exactly what you are. I mean, we are feeding you here. We're feeding you this stuff. It's up to you to take it, run with it, use it, create opportunity with it. And so, yeah, I love this, man. This is always good stuff. And for those of you that never listened to Brian or Frank before, man, they just vomit good stuff. I mean, they are on top of it. What's going on in the world. If you don't follow the National Real Estate Post, man, I'm telling you what, you're missing out because there's so much good stuff.
Show up and throw up. Hey, you know, and here's the hard part, okay? So taking this from an idea to actual application, okay? So there's a realtor watching this right now who says, you know what, that sounds like a pretty good idea, okay? And there's some of you who probably think this is a terrible idea, and that's okay too. I hope you have a plan if you think this is a terrible idea. I'm just telling you to call your clients, so which is last time I checked.
What you should be doing.
What you should be doing. Mm-hmm. But taking this from an idea to actual application, if you're watching this right now, you're going to say, this is a good idea. And then we're going to end this interview, and then you're going to have something to do. Okay, so it's 9:30. It could be 12:30 on the West Coast. Or
eat lunch. Eat lunch. Yep.
Yeah, it could be 11:30. It could be 10:30, or it could be on 9:30 out here. Whatever the case may be. Maybe you get a coffee. You know, maybe, you know, oh, by the way, the first day of school for your kids, which is what my kids are doing right now. So maybe we want to check on the kids. Maybe
mimosa. Maybe have a mimosa to celebrate.
Whatever. I mean, the thing is the longer you wait, the harder it is for you to actually pick up your phone. It really is. And, you know, there's a statement from one of my good friends, Chad Prio. He says, it's important for salespeople to take imperfect action. You know, and what does that mean? What it means is if you wait for whatever your decision to be perfect, you'll never take that action. The action is more important than the quality of what you're doing. So that means be all thumbs. Just call your clients up. And through the process of taking that imperfect action and just having the conversations, you will start to find your voice. If you've ever cold called before, which I recommend everyone do it, your first 10 calls are terrible. They're horrible. It sucks. It's painful. But you start to find your voice. You start to find what people are keying on. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the better you get, and the better your conversion gets. So the most important thing, if you think this might be a halfway decent idea, and it is when we get off this call, just pick up that phone. Go find 10 of your past clients, your friends, and find a way to turn that conversation into real estate. And here's what it all comes down to. Just ask them how they're doing. Yeah. Is everything okay, man? You know what? I was thinking about you. Things are tough right now. And I just was on a conversation. I had a call with somebody, and they were talking about underemployed people right now, man. I just want to know, are you doing okay? And we all know that people are, you know, we're starting to suffer the, you know, emotional and intellectual consequences of a long-term quarantine. People are going nuts right now. And, you know, it stands to reason. So you reaching out and showing empathy to somebody who you might not have spoken to for a couple of years isn't just a good thing to do. It might just be the best thing that you could possibly do. Yeah. So make those calls, take that imperfect action, because it can help them and it can get you listing opportunities. And both of those are good, not just for you and your clients, but also for your community who desperately needs an infusion of money. And that's what's going to take place if you can find a way to list homes.
Let me recap this for you guys listening. So that phone call is what he just mentioned. But when you're thinking about, okay, what do I say? Here's the thing. If they're doing fine and haven't lost their job, it's just a really good touch, right? You're just making a connection, and who knows what'll come of that. Nothing bad, right? But if they are that person who has lost their job, and you help them understand that anticipating that opportunity that they have right now, which is if you're not sure and you think, okay, I'm getting to a place where I'm not going to be able to make my mortgage payment, now is a great time to sell because your home value's here, right? Maybe you have to go rent until you get stable, 6, 12 months, right? But then you don't damage your credit, and now you can buy again in 12 months when you get back on your feet. That is exactly the conversation or the education you need to be giving to those people that you're calling so they understand. So the people that did lose their job, help them anticipate. And if they're going to miss a payment, they are screwing themselves for a long time. That also hurts your business. And so try to anticipate, not let that happen. Be a hero. It's only going to help your business do crazy things. Brian, this has been awesome. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to add or we didn't talk about?
No, not really. But again, just to kick a dead horse one more time, let these people know, sell your house for $1 and buy it back in 6 months for 75 cents. Like it's not a bad idea because, again, we're seeing such massive conflicting information about employment figures, property values, and equity that it's impossible to run any industry at these high RPMs without cracking a cylinder.
Yeah.
And it is the nature. It is the nature of real estate, and it's been tracked for the past 100 years. And it really does appear that something's on the horizon. So have the conversations. Have the conversations. And I will tell you, do it unencumbered with a certain level of exuberance too. Because as we're going forward in a world that has seemingly gone a little mad sometimes, and maybe it's affecting you, affecting your family, be a salmon, swim upstream, zig when other people zag. Be positive. And if you could find a way to bring a little, shine a little light in somebody's day, if you get a deal or don't get a deal out of it, over the course of enough calls, you will find additional business. And even if you didn't, all you're doing is reaching out and tell people that you're thinking about them. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, I'm sick of talking about me. Why don't you talk about me for a while? I mean, everybody will, everyone likes a little attention shined on them.
100%. Man, there is so much opportunity here. One more time. In times of crisis, find opportunity. In times of opportunity, anticipate crisis.
Yep.
Remember that one, folks. As a business model, that will help your career immensely.
I'm going to go search that right now. There's no way you just came up with that.
I didn't just come up with it. Actually, it was from a conversation that I then wrote it down. I created it myself. Maybe somebody said something to that effect, but I created my own little phrase, and I'm having, I was going to create content around it, actually.
Well, if you watch the National Real Estate Post tomorrow, I promise you I'm saying it. But don't you worry. I'm going to give you credit for it.
Yes.
Because that's good. That's really good.
I love it. I love it. Brian, thank you so much. It's been fun. I hope you guys took something from today, as we usually do. Hopefully in 2 weeks when we're back, there's not something crazy that happened again, or maybe that there's a repeal. Don't forget, I'm going to put up this link. It's in the chat right now. Go grab it before we end this. Just click on it. It'll take you out to let's see, where's it taking you to? The National Association of Mortgage Bankers, right? And there's right there on the first page. You can go down and you can take action. There's a blue button that says take action. All you have to do is go sign that form or do whatever it is, and you can take that action. I'm going to post this to Lab Coats. Go search my name in Lab Coats. You can share the post and get your community, your real estate community, to also take action. And let's turn this thing around.
Yeah, fire tornadoes this week. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's perfect for 2020. I'm thinking an asteroid next week.
Oh man, you know what? I'm just happy to have sports back myself, and it's holding in there. So I'm just going to.
Did you see the UFC fights this weekend?
No, I didn't, man. I couldn't stay awake.
Baseball?
Yes, baseball, hockey. I actually watched a replay of a hockey game last night because I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. So
okay, I got you.
I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying the golf. I mean, the PGA a couple weeks ago was amazing.
Yeah,
I'm taking what I can get, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. It just a little normalcy, even though it feels a little abnormal, a little normalcy seems pretty good to me right now.
I'll take it. I'll take it, man. All right, brother. We will talk. We will talk either on your side or back on our side in 2 weeks. Looking forward to it. And you have a good one, brother.
Likewise, you too. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it. Bye.